Hello, literary travelers. Welcome once again to Literary Journeys with River. Today, I invite you to dive into the fascinating and romantic world of the Regency era with The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn, the second book in the acclaimed Bridgerton series. Get ready to meet Anthony Bridgerton, the eldest brother of this charming family, who has decided it's time to marry and find the perfect wife. But what happens when logic and duty clash with unexpected passion? Join me as we explore the romantic entanglements, witty dialogues, and exciting moments that make this story a must-read. If you love romances filled with spark, humor, and deep emotions, you can't miss this summary. So, take a seat, relax your mind, and let yourself be carried away by this wonderful story of love and discovery. Let's get started. Prologue. Anthony Bridgerton enjoyed an enviable childhood, growing up in an aristocratic but loving family. His parents, Edmund and Violet Bridgerton, adored each other and, despite being young, were sensible and dedicated to their children. Edmund, a strong and affectionate man, spent a lot of time with Anthony, teaching him about life and the world. This special relationship deeply marked Anthony, who admired and aspired to be like his father. The Bridgertons' life was idyllic, with countryside walks and adventure stories every night. The children grew up in an environment full of love and laughter, especially when the family gathered after Edmund's excursions with his children. The arrival of new siblings did not diminish Edmund's affection, as he always found time for all his children. However, tragedy struck unexpectedly. During a summer when Anthony was 18, Edmund suddenly died from a bee sting. The news was devastating, especially for Anthony, who idolized his father and could not believe that something so insignificant could take away someone so vital and strong. The family was plunged into grief, especially Violet, who was pregnant with their 8th child. The doctors, though puzzled by Edmund's death, could not offer real comfort. Anthony, facing the magnitude of the loss, took on the responsibility of caring for his mother and siblings, trying to keep the family together. That night, standing before his father's body, Anthony understood the fragility of life and became convinced that, like Edmund, his fate was to die young. This thought would always accompany him, shaping his decisions and his perspective on life and death. Chapter 1. In London's high society, Anthony Bridgerton is considered a rake, the most coveted and dangerous bachelor of the season. This type of man does not boast about his conquests or need to show off, as his reputation precedes him. Anthony is aware of his attractiveness and the effect he has on women, making him a recurring topic in Lady Whistledown's society paper. Meanwhile, in the Sheffield household, Kate and Edwina discuss the contents of Lady Whistledown's latest publication. Kate, always critical and sarcastic, jokes about the column's obsession with rakes, especially Viscount Bridgerton. Edwina, on the other hand, shows interest and laughs, delighted by the gossip surrounding the aristocracy. The Sheffields, consisting of Kate, Edwina, and their mother Mary, are in London for the social season, hoping that Edwina, the incomparable of 1814, will secure a good marriage to ensure the family's future. Although Kate feels a bit out of place and does not enjoy the same attention as her sister, she remains determined to support Edwina in her quest. Kate is practical and straightforward, traits that contrast with Edwina's ethereal beauty and sweetness. Kate knows that her future will not resemble her sister's, but she consoles herself with the idea of finding her own happiness in the countryside. However, Mary insists that both should take advantage of the London season to find good matches. Back at the exclusive Whites Club, Anthony Bridgerton shares shocking news with his brothers Benedict and Colin. He is thinking about getting married. The surprise is enormous, as Anthony is known for his life of pleasure and adventures, always avoiding serious commitments with respectable women. Nevertheless, Anthony has decided that it is time to fulfill his family duty and find a wife. Anthony is not looking for just any wife. He has specific criteria. She must be attractive, intelligent, and, most importantly, someone he cannot fall in love with. His father's early death deeply marked him, making him believe that he too will die young and that falling in love would unnecessarily complicate his life. Colin mentions Edwina Sheffield, the most outstanding beauty of the season, as a possible candidate. Anthony, impressed by her intelligence and attractiveness, decides that she will be his future wife. Anthony's determination marks the beginning of his search, while the Sheffields continue their social adventure in London, unaware of what fate has in store for them. Chapter 2. At the Heartside Ball, Anthony Bridgerton surprised everyone by dancing with several young single women, unusual behavior for him. This was a topic of discussion in Lady Whistledown's society paper, where it was speculated that the Viscount was trying to prove that the criticisms of his behavior were wrong. At 11 o'clock, Kate Sheffield's worst fears came true when Anthony asked her sister, Edwina, to dance with him. Edwina accepted, and Mary, Kate's stepmother, watched the couple with a look suggesting wedding plans. Kate tried to convince Mary that Anthony was not a good match due to his reputation as a rake. But Mary, hopeful for a favorable union for Edwina, seemed unconvinced. While Edwina danced with the Viscount, Kate watched worriedly, noticing how attractive and elegant Anthony was. Mary, who had a pleasant conversation with Anthony's mother, Lady Bridgerton, seemed even more certain that the Viscount would be a good match for Edwina. Suddenly, Colin Bridgerton, Anthony's brother, approached Kate and Mary. After introducing himself and chatting briefly, Colin invited Kate to drink lemonade. Kate, initially reluctant, accepted the invitation. During their conversation, Kate discovered that Colin had a sharp sense of humor and a charming personality, making her feel a bit more comfortable, although she remained wary of the Bridgertons. Colin and Kate continued their conversation at the lemonade table, where Colin revealed that Anthony was looking to start a family that year. This surprised Kate, who did not expect a rake like Anthony to be thinking about marriage. Colin tried to convince Kate that Anthony was serious in his intention to find a wife, but Kate remained skeptical. Later, Colin told Anthony that he needed to meet Kate, as Edwina would not marry without her sister's approval. Anthony, although skeptical, accepted his brother's advice. When Anthony met Kate, they exchanged sharp words and defiant looks. Kate was clearly uncomfortable and distrustful of Anthony, while he tried to be charming despite Kate's evident hostility. Finally, determined to win Kate's approval, Anthony invited her to dance. Kate, although reluctant, accepted the invitation. During the dance, the tension between them was palpable, but Anthony was determined to prove that he could be the right man for her sister Edwina. Chapter 3. The Heartside Ball left London society shocked to see Anthony Bridgerton, the infamous rake, dancing with Catherine Sheffield. This event was commented on by Lady Whistledown, who noted the peculiarity that Catherine, Edwina's older sister, now attracted so much interest after Edwina declared that she needed her sister's approval to marry. For Kate, dancing with Anthony was a test of her patience. Although she found him irritating, she knew she had to behave decorously. Anthony, always direct, asked why she hated him. Kate, not wanting to be less frank, replied that she did not hate him, but that she could not like a man like him, known for his libertine behavior. The conversation continued in a sarcastic and challenging tone, with Anthony enjoying provoking Kate and her trying to maintain her composure. Anthony tried to convince Kate that his intentions towards Edwina were serious, but Kate, based on his reputation, was not willing to accept it. Despite their differences, there were moments of shared laughter, but the tension between them was palpable. The next day, the Sheffield house was filled with flowers for Edwina. Anthony decided to visit the sisters and, to Kate's surprise, brought flowers not only for Edwina but also for her and Mary. This gesture, though calculated to impress Edwina, touched Kate's heart, as she had never received flowers before. However, her distrust of Anthony did not diminish. During his visit, Anthony and Kate exchanged more sharp words. Anthony enjoyed the opportunity to annoy Kate, while she remained firm in her dislike for him. The tension increased when Kate tried to call Mary to accompany her, fearing being alone with Anthony. In the midst of this uncomfortable encounter, a small corgi named Newton burst onto the scene, causing a commotion in the hall. Anthony, expecting a fearsome dog, was surprised to see an adorable corgi with a round belly. Newton's arrival brought a comedic respite to the situation but did not ease the growing tension between Anthony and Kate. Despite her attempts to keep Anthony away from Edwina, Kate began to realize that she faced a considerable challenge. Anthony was not easy to deter, and his persistence could jeopardize Kate's plans to protect her sister from a man she deemed unsuitable. Chapter 4. An unexpected incident occurred one Thursday in Hyde Park involving several high society figures. The Viscount of Bridgerton, the two Miss Sheffields, Mr. Nigel Burbrook, and an unidentified breed dog starred in a commotion that, according to rumors, left the dog as the winner. At the Sheffield house, Newton, Kate's mischievous corgi, seemed to take a liking to the Viscount, who did not miss an opportunity to remark on the chaos caused by the dog. Mary, Kate's stepmother, persistently suggested that Anthony accompany Kate on Newton's walk, hoping they might run into Edwina, Kate's younger sister. During the walk, Newton bolted toward the Serpentine, pulling on the leash and dragging Kate. Anthony joined the chase, trying to catch the dog, but Newton headed straight for Edwina, who was with Mr. Burbrook by the lake. The result was disastrous. Edwina fell into the water and was soaked. In a heroic act, Anthony pulled Edwina out of the lake while exchanging harsh words with Kate, blaming her for Newton's misbehavior. Kate, on her part, tried to defend herself and explain that it had all been an accident. The tension between them was palpable, and the accusations did not cease. To resolve the situation, Anthony decided to borrow Geoffrey Montrose's carriage to take Edwina home, leaving Kate with Burbrook, who would accompany her once he repaired his carriage. Reluctantly, Kate accepted the plan, though she was unhappy with the idea of leaving her sister alone with the Viscount, a man whose reputation deeply concerned her. As she watched Anthony and Edwina drive away, Kate reflected on what had happened. Staying with Burbrook and Newton was, in her opinion, a torture, as Newton proved to be a better conversationalist than the unfortunate Mr. Burbrook. Her concern about Anthony's influence over Edwina mixed with her frustration at not being able to control Newton and avoid the scandal in Hyde Park. This episode not only highlighted the tensions between Kate and Anthony, but also underscored the importance of the loyalty and protection Kate felt for her younger sister. Despite the conflicts, she was determined to keep Edwina safe from any man who could hurt her, including the charming and persuasive Viscount Bridgerton. Chapter 5. Lady Whistledown, having learned of the offense caused to Catherine Sheffield by the description of her dog, hurried to correct her mistake. Newton, the corgi, had been a source of chaos in Hyde Park, and his involvement in the Serpentine incident had left Edwina with a cold and Kate with an urgent topic of conversation. Edwina, wrapped in blankets and drinking a healing brew, was questioned by Kate about her conversation with Viscount Bridgerton during the return journey home. Edwina mentioned that he was courteous and concerned for her well-being, something Kate found hard to believe, given that she had just come out of the lake completely soaked. Kate's interest in the details of the Viscount and Edwina's conversation revealed more than she wanted to admit. When Edwina suggested that Bridgerton might be a good candidate for a husband, Kate clearly disagreed, reminding her sister of the Viscount's reputation as a rake. Kate's concern about the Viscount's influence over Edwina mixed with her own frustration. Despite her dislike for Anthony Bridgerton, she could not ignore the growing attraction she felt towards him, an attraction that annoyed and puzzled her. Edwina, however, began to suspect that there was more between her sister and the Viscount. Kate's insistence on disqualifying him seemed motivated not only by her desire to protect Edwina, but also by a personal interest she could not hide. A few days later, Mary decided that Kate and she should attend the musical evening at the Bridgerton mansion, despite Edwina's absence. Kate, although reluctant, had no choice but to accompany her mother. They arrived at the imposing mansion, where the wealth and elegance of the place impressed Kate. Meanwhile, Anthony, from his study, watched the arrival of the guests and found himself surprised by Kate's presence. Despite his desire to avoid her, he could not ignore the attraction he felt towards her. his mind filled with memories of the vivid and disturbing dream he had, where Kate occupied a central place. Determined to stay away from Kate, Anthony prepared to face the musical evening, hoping not to run into her. However, the inevitability of their encounter floated in the air, like a palpable tension threatening to overflow at any moment. In the music room, Kate tried to remain unnoticed, but she knew that the Viscount's presence was unavoidable. The evening had just begun, and the music was only the prelude to a night that promised more uncomfortable encounters and surprising revelations. Chapter 6. The musical evening at the Bridgerton mansion promised to be a high-level artistic occasion, something not always guaranteed at these events. Maria Rosso, the Italian soprano with undeniable charisma both in her voice and her presence, attracted the attention of more than one gentleman, even after her performance ended. From her seat in the back, Kate knew the exact moment when Viscount Bridgerton entered the room. She tried to convince herself that she wasn't paying him too much attention, but the truth was that his arrival had not gone unnoticed. Anthony discreetly sat near his family without noticing Kate's presence. As the soprano began her performance, Kate couldn't help but notice how Maria Rosso cast seductive glances at Anthony. This situation caused her a mix of irritation and disappointment. Although she should be glad to have evidence of the Viscount's womanizing nature, she couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. The performance concluded, and the singer went directly to Anthony, who returned her with a half-smile and an affectionate gesture. Kate watched with disgust until Mary interrupted her and asked her to stop looking at the Viscount. Despite her protests, Kate accepted that she couldn't keep watching Anthony's movements. Mary led Kate to the front of the room to greet their hostess, Viscountess Bridgerton. Lady Bridgerton turned out to be a charming woman, proud of her children and eager to meet Edwina. During the conversation, it became clear that the Viscountess was interested in pairing Anthony with Edwina, something that worried Kate. Shortly after, Kate found herself trying to escape Mrs. Featherington, who seemed interested in talking about the Serpentine incident. Seizing the opportunity, Kate slipped into the hallway to catch her breath. However, upon hearing the voices of Anthony and Maria approaching, she quickly hid in a nearby study. Crouched under the desk, Kate listened to the conversation between Anthony and Maria, who were discussing the rumors about the Viscount's marriage and his intentions. Anthony, smelling a familiar scent of lilies and soap, discovered Kate hiding and decided to confront her. The tension in the room was palpable when Anthony closed the door and approached her. Anthony, trying to keep his composure, pulled her out of her hiding place and questioned her motives. Nervous, Kate tried to explain herself, but the Viscount's proximity disarmed her. Anthony, with a gentle but firm touch, left her speechless, leaving her with the certainty that he had won this confrontation. Chapter 7. At Lady Bridgerton's musical evening, Kate Sheffield observed from the back of the room, noting how Anthony, Viscount Bridgerton, entered late and sat near his family. Maria Rosso, the Italian soprano, kept casting insinuating glances at him during her performance, which irritated Kate. The situation became more uncomfortable when Mary led her to the front of the room to greet Viscountess Bridgerton and her daughter Eloise. The Viscount's mother showed interest in meeting Edwina, Kate's sister, who could not attend due to a cold. After an awkward encounter with Mrs. Featherington, Kate escaped to the hallway for some air, only to realize that Anthony and Maria were approaching. Desperate not to be seen, she hid in a nearby study. While crouching under a desk, Anthony and Maria entered the room. Their conversation revealed Anthony's womanizing nature, which increased Kate's frustration. Anthony noticed a familiar scent and discovered Kate hiding. The situation turned tense as he closed the door and confronted her. The attraction between them became palpable, and despite his initial intention to scare her, Anthony kissed her. Kate, surprised and confused, responded to the kiss before quickly pulling away and confronting him from a distance. Anthony, with a mix of anger and desire, couldn't help but feel attracted to Kate, even though he knew he shouldn't. She, on her part, tried to keep her composure while they argued. Kate reminded Anthony that she would not allow him to marry Edwina. The tension between them grew, culminating in a confrontation where Kate declared that she would never let him ruin her sister's life. 2 days later, Kate was still furious. The arrival of a bouquet of flowers from Anthony for Edwina only increased her frustration. The note accompanying the flowers seemed more like an insult directed at Kate than a compliment to her sister. As Kate obsessed over the meaning of the kiss and the note, an invitation arrived from Lady Bridgerton for a countryside gathering at her manor. Kate knew she couldn't avoid attending and feared what might happen between Anthony and Edwina during the event. Tension and worry consumed Kate as she prepared to face Anthony again, determined to protect her sister from the Viscount's intentions at any cost. Chapter 8. In the week following the musical evening, London society's rumour mill focused on the countryside gathering organized by Lady Bridgerton at her manor in Kent. The expectation was that one of the Bridgerton brothers would soon be engaged, and the guest list promised an abundance of marriageable young ladies. Anthony, aware of his mother's intentions, found himself in his study at Aubrey Hall, reflecting on the gathering and his own decisions. He watched from the window as the Sheffields arrived, descending from their modest carriage. Edwina stepped out first, followed by Mary, and finally Kate. Anthony felt a mix of anticipation and tension upon seeing her. Unlike her mother and sister, Kate had a frank and direct attitude that always unsettled him. Kate, for her part, was surprised by the welcoming appearance of Aubrey Hall. Upon entering, they were warmly received by Lady Bridgerton, who showed a clear interest in Edwina. The hostess offered tea, but the Sheffields decided to retire to rest. Kate, however, expressed a desire to explore the gardens. As Anthony strolled through the gardens, he unexpectedly encountered Kate. Their conversation was tense but also revealing. Anthony apologized for his behavior in the study, an apology that Kate accepted reluctantly. The tension between them was palpable, and although they tried to keep a cordial conversation, unresolved feelings quickly surfaced. Kate remembered the night in the study, the intensity of the kiss, and the confusion that followed. Anthony, on the other hand, couldn't stop thinking about the attraction he felt for her, an attraction that complicated his intentions to marry Edwina. Determined not to let his feelings interfere with his plans, Anthony tried to maintain his composure. Returning to the house, Anthony realized that the situation with Kate and Edwina would not be easily resolved. The week promised to be a constant challenge, and Kate's presence in the gardens only intensified his doubts. As he walked away, he knew he had to make a decision soon, a decision that would define his future and that of the Sheffields. Chapter 9. The tension in the air was palpable as Anthony and Edwina walked towards the Pall Mall field. They had maintained a polite conversation about the weather and education, but the connection between them had not strengthened. Anthony felt strange, almost indifferent, despite Edwina's evident beauty and grace. Upon reaching the field, Anthony noticed that Kate had chosen the black mallet, known in the Bridgerton family as the Mallet of Death. This did not bode well. Colin, always ready to joke, commented with Kate about the game, and everyone seemed to be in a good mood. Daphne and Simon were also there, ready for the competition. The gathering soon turned into a fierce competition, typical of the Bridgertons. Kate proved to be a skilled and cunning player, which did not surprise Anthony at all. Every move, every strike with the mallet was precise and calculated. The tension between Anthony and Kate was evident, although not openly acknowledged. Colin, always observant, noticed the dynamic and couldn't help but make witty comments, which only increased Anthony's discomfort. However, the Viscount tried to maintain his composure and focused on the game. Despite his efforts, his mind kept wandering to Kate and the kiss they had shared. During the game, family rivalries became evident. Daphne and Colin teamed up against Anthony, and Simon, always the mediator, tried to keep the peace. The game of Pall Mall was more than just a game. It was a manifestation of the dynamics and relationships within the Bridgerton family. Edwina, for her part, played with grace and skill, but she didn't have the same competitive ferocity as the Bridgertons. Despite her beauty and sweetness, she did not fully capture Anthony's attention. His thoughts kept returning to Kate, who, to his chagrin, seemed to have control over his emotions and actions. Finally, the game came to an end. The Bridgertons dispersed, laughing and joking, while Anthony stayed behind, watching Kate. He knew he had to make a decision soon. The tension between his desire for Kate and his plan to marry Edwina was almost unbearable. As the sun set, Anthony decided he needed to talk to Kate alone. There were things that needed to be clarified, and he couldn't keep ignoring the feelings that arose every time he was near her. But that conversation would have to wait. For now, he joined the others, determined to maintain the facade of courtesy and calm. Chapter 10. The air was filled with anticipation as the players prepared for the game of Pall Mall. Colin had assigned the colors of the mallets with a mischievous look, and Anthony, much to his chagrin, accepted the pink mallet. Edwina, with her usual elegance, tried to exchange it, but Colin insisted that the blue matched her eyes, and so it was decided. Anthony, though annoyed, resolved to win the game to prove that the mallet's color did not determine the outcome. With introductions made, the game began with a mix of seriousness and camaraderie. Simon, the Duke, opened the game with a good shot, followed by Anthony, who, despite his determination, found his ball stopped by an obstacle. Colin and Daphne followed, showing the inherent competitiveness of the Bridgertons. As the guest, Kate asked for a practice shot but was flatly denied. However, with a strong and precise hit, she proved she could compete at the Bridgertons' level. The game progressed, and Kate fell behind after an unfortunate shot sent her ball rolling down a hill, just as Daphne had anticipated. The situation became interesting when Colin, with a cunning move, sent Anthony's ball in the opposite direction, causing the Viscount visible frustration. Kate, for her part, decided to take advantage of the opportunity and, with a malicious smile, hit her own ball to divert Anthony's even further, making it roll into the lake. Kate's celebration was effusive, jumping and shouting with joy while Anthony watched her with a mix of surprise and admiration. Colin and Daphne joined the celebration, declaring Kate the winner of the spirit of the game, even though she was technically still behind in the score. Simon and Edwina, watching from a distance, recognized Kate's wit and audacity, which elevated her status in the eyes of the Bridgertons. With the game technically unfinished, the match was called off due to general amusement and threatening weather. Simon, concerned for Daphne's well-being, insisted on returning to the house before it started to rain. As everyone dispersed, Edwina suggested retrieving the pink ball from the lake, an idea that Anthony and Colin quickly accepted. After a short debate, Anthony offered to go into the water and retrieve the ball. As he removed his boots, Kate approached him with a blanket, showing a more considerate side that he didn't expect. This gesture caused a momentary connection between them, a truce in their constant dispute. After retrieving the ball, Anthony and Kate climbed the hill together, silently reflecting on the day's events. Upon reaching the shed, they realized that Colin and Edwina had already gathered everything, including the purple mallet that had mysteriously disappeared earlier. Kate, with a smile, joked about the competition, and Anthony, surprisingly, decided to take the blanket to the house for washing, a small act of consideration that did not go unnoticed. The day ended with a sense of camaraderie and renewed respect among everyone. Anthony and Kate, although still maintaining their rivalry, found common ground in their competition and determination. As they walked back to the house together, a new understanding emerged between them, marking the beginning of a possible reconciliation. Chapter 11. Anthony and Kate walked together towards the house, each lost in their thoughts. Anthony observed Kate, admiring her beauty, always in motion, always expressive. He remembered how society saw her only through her sister Edwina, a dazzling beauty who eclipsed those around her. However, during the game of Pall Mall, Anthony realized that he hadn't paid attention to Edwina but had been watching Kate. Kate, with her enthusiasm, her laughter, and her concentration, had captured his full attention. He remembered her celebrating her sister's achievements and teasing him maliciously before sending the ball flying into the lake. This revelation worried him but also intrigued him. As they walked, Anthony tried to start a conversation about the weather. Kate, with a thoughtful expression, mentioned her aversion to violent rain. Anthony laughed at the image she evoked, and soon they were sharing a lighter conversation. Kate, kicking a pebble as she walked, captured Anthony's attention in a new way, making him laugh for no apparent reason. Kate, puzzled by Anthony's laughter, confronted him, and he, still laughing, tried to explain that he found her expression amusing. In a moment of frankness, Anthony asked Kate to fulfill a forfeit for the game of Pall Mall. Answer a question sincerely. He leaned towards her and, with an intensity that left her trembling, asked if she still hated him. Kate, surprised, couldn't answer, but her silence was enough for Anthony, who interpreted her lack of response as a no. That night, Kate, nervous, decided to face the evening with bravery. She met Penelope Featherington in the hallway, and they decided to go down to the drawing room together. Penelope, in her yellow dress, complained about her mother's choices, but Kate tried to cheer her up. In the drawing room, Kate and Penelope were approached by Cressida Cooper and Basil Grimston, who didn't miss the opportunity to make disparaging comments. Penelope endured their insults with dignity, and just when the situation became unbearable, Anthony appeared. With a simple action, Anthony diverted attention to himself and offered his arm to Penelope to take her to the dining room, leaving Cressida speechless. Kate watched Anthony, now with a new perspective, questioning her opinion of him. Anthony, with his act of kindness, showed that perhaps he wasn't the heartless man she had thought, leaving Kate with a sense of confusion and growing interest. Chapter 12. After dinner, when the conversations and society games had ended, and the ladies were retiring to their rooms, Kate couldn't sleep. Despite her efforts to calm her mind, she kept thinking about Anthony Bridgerton's gesture towards Penelope Featherington. Unable to relax, she decided to go to the library in search of a book to distract herself. Careful not to wake Edwina, Kate slipped through the dark hallways, lighting a candle and moving stealthily. Upon reaching the library, she began searching the shelves, murmuring to herself about what kind of book might help her fall asleep. While immersed in her search, a flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed by a deafening thunderclap that made her retreat in terror. Kate, with her deep fear of storms, curled up under a table, trembling with fear. She remembered how, as a child, her father or Mary would comfort her during storms, but now she found herself alone, facing her terror. At that moment, Anthony entered the library. Alarmed to see the candle lit, he was about to extinguish it when he heard a sound coming from under the table. Crouching, he found Kate in an absolute state of terror. Unsure of what to do at first, he approached cautiously, speaking to her softly and taking her hand. His presence and soothing words began to calm her gradually. Anthony sat beside her, holding her and murmuring words of comfort until she started to relax. As the storm moved away, Kate and Anthony began to talk more openly. Kate asked Anthony to tell her about his childhood in the house, and so he began sharing memories of his family, especially his father. Through their conversation, a space of intimacy and understanding opened between them. Anthony confessed how difficult it was to lose his father at 18, and Kate shared her experience of losing her mother at a young age and how Mary had filled that void in her life. As the storm calmed, Kate felt she could return to her room. Anthony, however, couldn't accompany her to avoid possible gossip. Still, their conversation had changed something between them, and as they said goodbye, Anthony insisted she call him by his first name, Anthony, a sign of the new closeness they had reached. When Kate turned to thank him, Anthony downplayed his help, but she insisted that it had been crucial for her. With a smile, Kate left the library and headed to her room, knowing that something significant had changed in her relationship with Anthony Bridgerton. Chapter 13. The morning after the storm brought clear and bright weather, though with a humid mist. Anthony had barely slept, his mind trapped in thoughts about Kate. As he got up past noon, the first thing he saw from his window was Kate walking slowly through the garden. He felt an irresistible need to join her. Meanwhile, Kate had decided to escape to the garden, preferring solitude to polite chatter. She sat on a bench by the rose pergola, reflecting on her feelings for Anthony. She thought about how he had shown himself to be a man of principles, even heroic, by protecting Penelope and helping her during her panic attack the previous night. Although she knew she couldn't interfere in Edwina's courtship, her heart longed for Anthony for herself, a desire that caused her deep pain. Anthony found her and approached, concerned for her well-being after the storm. Although Kate appreciated his courtesy, she felt disappointed, wishing his concern came from deeper feelings. When she tried to explain that she no longer opposed his relationship with Edwina, Anthony felt a mix of relief and frustration. Although it was what he wanted, the spark between them complicated his emotions. Suddenly, the moment was interrupted when a bee began to buzz near Kate. Anthony, terrified, ordered her not to move. Kate, confused by his extreme reaction, tried to shoo the insect away, only to be stung in the process. Anthony's reaction was immediate and desperate, trying to extract the venom. Kate, not fully understanding his panic, tried to calm him, but he remained fixated on the idea that the sting could kill her, remembering his father's death from a bee. As Anthony sucked the venom from the sting, Kate saw 3 women watching them: Mary, Lady Bridgerton, and Mrs. Featherington. At that moment, Kate knew her life was about to change irrevocably. Chapter 14. The countryside gathering at the Bridgerton house promised a scandal, and with so many gossips present, London society would soon know all the details. For a brief moment, everyone was paralyzed by the scene. Kate pushed Anthony, who landed on the ground, still obsessed with saving her from what he saw as a deadly bee sting. Lady Bridgerton, horrified, asked what was happening. Anthony, with a gravity reflecting his fear, explained that Kate had been stung by a bee. Kate insisted she was fine, pulling up her dress to show the sting, while Mary, Mrs. Featherington, and Lady Bridgerton watched, horrified and fascinated. Mrs. Featherington, with her usual lack of tact, declared that Anthony must marry Kate, an announcement that horrified Kate and made everyone present uncomfortable. Anthony, recognizing he had no other choice, agreed to marry Kate, although the decision was made without emotion. Kate, feeling the burden of fate, tried to talk to Anthony in private, seeking some hint of his true feelings. Anthony, in a firm tone, without room for argument, stated they would marry. Despite her doubts and fear, Kate had no choice but to accept. As they moved to a more private spot in the garden, Anthony allowed himself to kiss Kate with a passion that surprised them both. The spark between them was undeniable, and although the moment was intoxicating, Kate knew it was not how she wanted their relationship to develop. Anthony, feeling desire and a connection with Kate, struggled against his own fears and emotional restrictions. He knew he had to maintain control and not let love enter his life, but the attraction to Kate was powerful. Finally, Anthony and Kate found themselves alone in a gazebo, where the passion reignited. Anthony, trying to reaffirm his decision, assured Kate they were destined to marry. Kate, though wishing he would choose her out of love and not obligation, couldn't help but feel a mix of hope and resignation. The reality of their engagement became evident, and as Anthony tried to assure Kate everything would be fine, she couldn't stop wondering if he was thinking of Edwina when he kissed her. With the marriage decided and the scandal inevitable, Kate could only warn herself. Be careful what you wish for, because you might get it. Chapter 15. Lady Whistledown is never wrong. Country gatherings always end in surprising engagements. Viscount Bridgerton has announced his engagement to Catherine Sheffield, not her sister Edwina, as expected. The details of the engagement remain a mystery, especially given that Mrs. Featherington, a witness to the event, has maintained an unusual silence. The speculation is that the Viscount has used his strong character to keep her quiet. Kate soon realized that being the center of attention did not suit her. The last few days in Kent were unbearable due to constant congratulations and questions about her sudden engagement. She only found solace in a private conversation with her sister Edwina, who was delighted and unsurprised by the news, declaring that she had always noticed the attraction between Kate and Anthony. Back in London, the situation worsened. Visits from the aristocracy were constant, each filled with congratulations tinged with disbelief and suspicion. Most did not believe that Anthony really wanted to marry Kate and expressed this in unflattering ways. Anthony, for his part, had avoided this scrutiny by staying at Aubrey Hall, attending to estate matters. The wedding was set for the following Saturday, partly to avoid further speculation and to protect Kate with the Bridgerton name. The days leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of activities, mainly shopping directed by Anthony's mother, Violet. Kate submitted to these preparations with resignation, seizing upon a note from Anthony asking her to be home at 4 in the afternoon to visit her. Anthony had spent the week reflecting on his impending marriage. He worried about falling in love with Kate, but trusted in his ability to control his emotions. He decided he needed to talk to Kate to clarify certain agreements about their marriage, ensuring there would be no misunderstandings. He arrived at the Sheffield house and was greeted by Kate, who had prepared tea. The conversation was direct. Anthony expressed that their marriage would be based on friendship and respect, not love. Kate nodded, though with pain in her heart. Anthony also promised fidelity, as long as she did not exclude him from her bed. The conversation continued with Anthony presenting her with the engagement ring, a simple but beautiful family heirloom. Kate was moved, though the conversation about the lack of love in their marriage still resonated in her mind. Anthony decided it was time to be more intimate and, after a playful exchange of words, kissed Kate passionately. The passion between them was undeniable and, though Kate enjoyed the moment, she knew she had to keep a clear head. The interruption of Newton, her dog, made them laugh and ended the encounter on a lighter note. Before leaving, Anthony reiterated that they would not see each other until the wedding due to a superstition of his mother. Kate accepted, feeling a mix of hope and resignation. Anthony left with the certainty that their marriage would be successful, while Kate remained worried about the expectations and mixed emotions awaiting her in her new life. Chapter 16. Lady Whistledown laments not being invited to the wedding of Lord Bridgerton and Catherine Sheffield, but promises to uncover all the details. Meanwhile, Kate spends the night before the wedding in her room, surrounded by trunks filled with her belongings, ready to move to her new home. Even Newton, her dog, is prepared with a new collar and his favorite toys. This process, though sentimental, helps her face the transition. Mary, Kate's mother, sent her old chest from Somerset, filled with childhood memories. This thoughtful act helps Kate feel more connected to her new life. While packing a modest but fine nightgown selected by Violet Bridgerton, she hears a knock on the door. Edwina enters with a jug of warm milk and asks if she is scared. Kate admits she is nervous, and Edwina assures her it is normal, as her life will change completely. Mary joins the conversation, bringing more warm milk. After Edwina leaves grumbling, Mary sits with Kate to talk about the wedding night. She shares her own experience and assures Kate that a woman's enjoyment depends on her husband. Kate, already familiar with the basics of the marital act, expresses concern about the differences between men and women in terms of pleasure. Mary tries to reassure Kate, saying Anthony will treat her with kindness and respect. However, Kate remains worried, fearing she is not Anthony's first choice and that he might desire another woman. The wedding, held at the Bridgerton mansion, is a small but lively event, with Gregory and Hyacinth causing a small altercation that adds a touch of humor. Kate observes everything from the vestibule, smiling despite her nerves. After the ceremony, Kate reflects on how quickly her life has changed and feels overwhelmed by the magnitude of the transformation. During the journey to Anthony's residence, Kate feels nervous and worried about what is to come. Anthony, noticing her anxiety, tries to reassure her. She asks him to wait a week before consummating the marriage, but he refuses, though he listens and tries to understand her fear. Finally, Anthony takes her to his bedroom and assures her there is nothing to fear. Although Kate is scared, her fears are not about the act itself but about the possibility that he does not love her. However, in the heat of the moment, Kate decides to give herself to Anthony, hoping he can reciprocate her feelings in the future. Chapter 17. Catherine Sheffield's wedding to Viscount Anthony Bridgerton has finally taken place. Lady Whistledown expresses her best wishes for the couple, highlighting how rare it is to find sensible and honorable people in the aristocratic elite. In the bedroom, Anthony feels an urgent need to be with Kate. He lifts her in his arms and carries her to the bed, gently laying her on the mattress. With each piece of clothing he removes, the passion between them grows. Anthony takes his time to admire and caress Kate, provoking a mix of desire and nervousness in her. Anthony assures her she will never see another man naked and demonstrates his desire as he undresses. Kate, nervous and inexperienced, feels vulnerable, but Anthony's tenderness reassures her. As he unbuttons her dress, Kate is overcome with excitement and fear. Anthony's passion intensifies as he undresses her completely. Kate, feeling exposed, follows her husband's every move. With a mix of nervousness and desire, Kate realizes this moment is a crucial step in their relationship. Anthony slowly removes her stockings, caressing every inch of her skin. The desire between them is palpable, and the tension grows as he caresses and kisses her. Anthony ensures she feels comfortable and desired at all times. Kate's vulnerability becomes evident as Anthony whispers words of desire and admiration. He reassures her, promising to make her his in a way she will never forget. Despite her nervousness, Kate gives in to the experience, trusting him. When they finally unite, the experience is intense and overwhelming for both. Anthony is concerned for Kate's well-being, trying to be gentle and patient. Kate, though nervous, allows herself to be carried away by the unknown and pleasurable sensations. As the passion grows, Anthony struggles to maintain control, wanting to please Kate. However, Kate's fear and insecurity emerge, questioning whether he truly desires her or thinks of another woman. Anthony, surprised and moved by her insecurities, firmly assures her of his desire and devotion. Finally, the passion reaches its peak. Anthony and Kate give themselves completely to each other, experiencing a deep and fiery connection. Afterward, Anthony comforts her and holds her close, assuring her this is just the beginning of their life together. Chapter 18. The hasty marriage of Lord and Lady Bridgerton remains the subject of speculation, though Lady Whistledown maintains that their union is out of love. She observes that the Viscount always murmurs things to his wife that make her smile and blush and dances with her more than expected, which she considers a sign of romance. In the following weeks, Kate and Anthony's life becomes a whirlwind of activities. After a brief stay in the countryside, they return to London for the social season. Kate had hoped to resume her flute lessons but finds herself caught in endless social visits and events. However, the nights are exclusively for Anthony, who always shows attentive and loving behavior, ensuring Kate feels cherished and appreciated, even listening to her practice the flute despite her lack of skill. Although Anthony is busy during the day with his responsibilities, the marriage turns out to be much better than Kate had expected. However, society, especially Edwina, firmly believes their marriage is a love match. One day, Edwina visits Kate, and while they enjoy tea, she reveals that everyone talks about how Anthony looks at her with passion. Kate, though secretly happy, tries to downplay the importance of those comments. The conversation takes a turn when Edwina confesses to having fallen in love with Mr. Bagwell, an intellectual she met at a countryside gathering. Kate, excited for her sister, assures her she will support her relationship. Edwina reveals that Mr. Bagwell is a second son and, although he does not have great income, she is willing to accept that situation, knowing that Kate and Anthony could help their mother if necessary. Anthony unexpectedly arrives home and joins the conversation. Edwina is pleasantly surprised to find that Anthony feels responsible for her and wants to meet Mr. Bagwell. This strengthens their bond, making Edwina feel for the first time what it is like to have a brother. After Edwina leaves, Kate and Anthony enjoy a moment together. Kate suggests inviting Mr. Bagwell to dinner to get to know him better, and Anthony, in an unexpected gesture of generosity, proposes providing a dowry for Edwina. Kate, moved by the gesture, throws herself into Anthony's arms, spilling some cups in the process. As they enjoy their closeness, Anthony reflects on how comfortable he feels with Kate and decides that, although he initially thought to keep some distance, he cannot help but feel attracted to her. Finally, they suggest going upstairs to their bedroom but decide to stay in the living room, enjoying their intimacy and letting love and passion completely envelop them. Chapter 19. Lady Mottram's annual ball was as crowded as ever, but observers could not overlook the absence of Lord and Lady Bridgerton. Though Lady Mottram assured everyone they had promised to attend, no one knew the reason that kept them home. That night, much later, Anthony lay on his side in bed, holding Kate against his chest while she slept soundly. He tried to cover her exposed ear so she wouldn't hear the raindrops hitting the windows, but she was restless even in her dreams. The storm intensified, and although Kate hadn't woken up, her sleep was disturbed. Anthony made soothing sounds and stroked her hair, hoping to calm her. Anthony couldn't understand why Kate feared the rain so much, though he was well acquainted with unfounded fears. The certainty of his inevitable death had obsessed him since he took his father's lifeless hand. Though he did not fear death, his marriage to Kate had changed his perspective, making him fear what he might lose. The storm worsened, and Kate, still asleep, began to mumble and move restlessly. When a thunderclap shook the night, she opened her eyes wide, showing total panic. Anthony embraced her and tried to calm her gently. She clung to him, whimpering and calling for her mother. Anthony realized that Kate was reliving a childhood trauma, and though he didn't know whether to wake her, he decided to stay by her side, trying to comfort her. Kate finally calmed down and fell back asleep just as the storm ended. The next morning, she woke up surprised to see Anthony watching her with concern and curiosity. He told her she had had a nightmare, and though Kate thought she no longer had them, she admitted that storms had always scared her. Anthony asked if she knew she talked in her sleep, and Kate, nervous, asked what she had said. Anthony revealed she had called for her mother, making Kate realize she needed answers. They decided to visit Mary to better understand her fear. Later that day, they visited Mary at her home. With Anthony's support, Kate asked Mary about her mother. Mary, though surprised, agreed to tell her what she knew. She explained that Kate's mother had died during a storm when she was 3 years old. Kate had been present during her mother's death, and the fear of storms had been etched into her subconscious. Mary recounted how Kate had been frantic and terrified that night, clinging to her mother even after her death. Though Kate didn't remember these events, hearing the story gave her a sense of relief. It felt like a weight had been lifted off her, and though she couldn't remember, knowing what had happened helped her understand her fear. Kate and Mary embraced, crying with relief. Anthony watched, moved, and at that moment, Kate realized how much she loved her husband. Though she didn't know if he would ever return her feelings, at that moment, she felt complete and happy. Chapter 20. Lady Whistledown observed with keen insight that Miss Edwina Sheffield had been very absorbed lately. Rumor had it that her heart had been stolen, though no one seemed to know the identity of the lucky gentleman. The indications suggested that the mysterious suitor did not reside in London, for Edwina showed no interest in any of the local gentlemen. Even at Lady Mottram's party, she remained seated without dancing, which aroused more curiosity about the mysterious man who had captivated her. That night, much later, Kate was at her dressing table brushing her hair while Anthony, absorbed in his thoughts, looked out the window. Kate, in a cheerful voice, commented that she believed the next time there was a storm, it wouldn't affect her as much. Anthony, surprised, asked if she really believed that. Kate explained she had an intuition, an optimistic feeling that her fear would disappear. Anthony, though he nodded, felt uneasy. Kate confessed that throughout her life, she had feared storms, feeling like she would die each time one occurred. Anthony, knowing he too carried a deep and irrational fear, felt overwhelmed by his own emotions. Kate had overcome her fear while he was still trapped in his. Kate recalled how, in the library at Aubrey Hall, she had felt for the first time that she could survive a storm thanks to Anthony's presence. He reflexively stroked her, feeling a mix of love and jealousy. Kate had conquered her demons, while he remained a prisoner of his. Recognizing that he had fallen in love with his wife, Anthony felt terrified at the thought of dying and leaving her alone. Suddenly, Anthony got up and kissed Kate with intense passion. He carried her to the bed, desperately desiring her. Though the passion between them was undeniable, Anthony could not escape his internal fears. After making love to her with an almost frantic intensity, Kate fell asleep, while Anthony watched her, unable to sleep. Kate, half asleep, told Anthony she hoped they would always be like this. The word always resonated in him like a sentence. Unable to bear the pressure, Anthony got up abruptly and began to dress. Kate, confused and hurt, asked where he was going, but he only replied that he needed to leave. Anthony left the house, crossing the street without a clear destination. He looked up at the window of their bedroom and saw Kate, causing him deep pain. He stood motionless in the street, wishing to return inside but knowing he couldn't. Finally, when the rain began to fall heavily, he walked away, feeling empty and directionless. Chapter 21. Lady Whistledown, always attentive to rumors and scandals, noted that although it was rumored that Lord and Lady Bridgerton were forced to marry, she firmly believed their union was out of love. Kate, sitting in the small dining room, stared at her breakfast without appetite, despite her evident hunger. Anthony hadn't returned the previous night, and although she had delayed breakfast until nearly 11 in the morning, he was still absent. Just then, a footman handed her an envelope with a light pink seal from Eloise Bridgerton. The note was brief. Anthony was at the Bridgerton mansion and not in good shape. Determined, Kate left breakfast and headed to the mansion. Upon arrival, she was greeted by Eloise herself, who revealed that Anthony had arrived very late the previous night and had locked himself in his study without informing anyone. Kate, surprised by Eloise's meticulous vigilance, couldn't help but admire her. With renewed determination, Kate headed to Anthony's study. She found Anthony asleep at his desk, with the curtains drawn and the room in darkness. After opening the curtains slightly to let in some light, she gently woke him up. Anthony, still groggy and hungover, asked what she was doing there. Kate, with a mix of firmness and concern, asked why he had left the previous night. Anthony, evasive, replied that it was complicated and that he needed time to think. Kate, frustrated but determined, tried to make him talk, but Anthony, feeling overwhelmed, insisted she leave. Kate, hurt and confused, left without looking back, leaving Anthony in his study, immersed in his own torments. The next day, Anthony woke up with a terrible hangover and was found by his brothers, Colin and Benedict, at their club. His brothers, concerned but also amused, tried to advise him, urging him to go home and make things right with Kate. After some reflection and a discussion with them, Anthony decided he needed to tell Kate he loved her. Filled with determination, he returned home only to discover that Kate was not there. The butler informed him that she had gone for a walk with Edwina and Mr. Bagwell. Impatient to find her, Anthony decided to search for her at Hyde Park. Upon arriving at the park, he encountered Lady Danbury, who stopped him for a conversation. Just as he was trying to be courteous with her, a runaway carriage appeared in the distance. Hearing the screams and barking, Anthony instinctively knew Kate was in danger. Without wasting a second, he spurred his horse and rushed after the runaway carriage. But before he could reach it, the carriage hit a rock and overturned. Anthony, paralyzed with horror, could only watch as the carriage crashed, fearing the worst for his beloved wife. Chapter 22. The situation was critical. Anthony arrived at the accident scene and saw Edwina desperately trying to free Kate, who was trapped inside the overturned carriage. Anthony's concern was palpable, as the carriage had rolled and crushed one side, complicating the rescue further. Determined, he tried to open a larger space, frantically calling out to Kate, but receiving no response. Edwina, though nervous, helped release the horses to prevent them from becoming more agitated. Meanwhile, Anthony continued searching for Kate, finally seeing her trapped among the wreckage. Although she was immobile, there was no visible blood, which gave him some relief. With a mix of desperation and tenderness, Anthony called out to her, swearing she couldn't die. Finally, Kate responded, assuring him she would be okay, though admitting she had injured her leg. With great care, Anthony extracted her from the debris, though not without causing Kate pain, who screamed in the process. Seeing her, Edwina exclaimed about the state of her leg, which was clearly broken. 3 hours later, Kate was installed in her bed, doped with laudanum to ease the pain. 3 surgeons had set her leg while Anthony watched over her attentively, worried about every move the doctors made. Kate, though grateful, felt restless at the prospect of spending a month in bed. Anthony promised to keep her company, despite Kate's complaints about sewing and reading. A deep and emotional conversation followed between Kate and Anthony. He confessed his fears and his conviction that he would die young, like his father, who had passed away at 38. Kate, with love and understanding, told him he was wrong, that he shouldn't let that fear dominate his life. She urged him to live fully, not to shy away from love and challenges out of fear of an uncertain fate. Finally, Anthony understood the truth in Kate's words. He decided not to waste a single moment together and kissed her with a devotion that filled him with hope. Kate, despite her broken leg, felt completely happy and sure that their love would make them stronger. Both promised to live each day to the fullest, finding happiness in every small moment shared. Epilogue. Lord Bridgerton celebrated his birthday surrounded by his family, a special occasion marking his 39th anniversary. Although the author of the famous Society magazine was not present, the details of the party did not escape her attentive ears. The celebration included a memorable concert where Anthony played the trumpet and Kate played the flute. Mrs. Bagwell's offer to play the pianoforte was declined, and young Miles Bridgerton, after climbing onto a chair, begged his parents to stop their performance. No one reprimanded the boy. On the contrary, everyone sighed in relief when the concert ended. While Kate brushed her hair before bed, Anthony commented on his suspicion that Lady Whistledown had a spy in the family, as she had narrated the events precisely, except for the small detail of the date. Kate laughed and reminded him that although their musical performances were terrible, the important thing was that they tried. Anthony embraced her tenderly, finding peace in her presence, and reflected on the meaning of turning 39. Since Kate had entered his life, his fears had gradually faded. That day, Anthony spent time in his study, in front of his father's portrait, talking to him about his life, his children, his siblings' marriages, and his mother's recent passion for painting. He also talked about Kate and how much he loved her. He realized this was what his father had always wanted for him: love and happiness. When the clock struck midnight, Anthony and Kate remained silent until the 12th chime sounded. Then, Kate whispered that the birthday was over, and Anthony suggested celebrating in bed. As they got comfortable, Kate mentioned she had read something in Lady Whistledown's column about Colin. Anthony, with little interest, preferred to focus on his wife, hinting they had much better things to do. Far from the Bridgerton mansion, a woman not so young but not old either, sat at her desk. With pen in hand, she began writing a new entry for the Society magazine, thus perpetuating the mystery and intrigue that so fascinated her readers. And so we conclude our journey through The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn. I hope you have enjoyed every moment of this thrilling story as much as I did. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming literary summaries. Leave your comments below. I'd love to hear what you thought of the book and what other stories you'd like to explore in future videos. Thank you for joining me on this literary adventure. See you in the next video of Literary Journeys with River. Until next time, travelers,